In this video, we're going to look at how you can check for listening ports and services on your Linux machine. And that way you can identify if there's any processes or things that are running ports that may have listening services that you don't expect, or maybe even detecting malicious malicious access or malicious attempts to exfiltrate data or anything similar. So the first thing that we can do to check for listening ports, let me just clear out the console here, is we're going to use netstat. Netstat's going to tell us a couple of different things. There's multiple switches you can run with the netstat command. I like to use tunpl, tunpull, whenever doing this on Linux, and I'll show you what that looks like. So if we run the netstat command, what you'll notice is you get the protocol, receiving, sending, so that's like data going back and forth. The local address, so this is the IP address that it's listening on, and then this is the port that the service is listening on. Foreign address is if there's something connected to it. The state is often listening, or it could be connected. And then at the end, you're going to have PID or the program name. That's like the process ID. One thing to note, if we run this without the sudo command, oftentimes you're not going to get the PID or the program names. And so if we run this with sudo, what we'll actually see is those process IDs and those program names for some of the things that are running on this machine. And this is nice because if we wanted to kill a task, for instance, then knowing this PID is an easy way that we can do something like that. So I want to walk through spinning up a service, seeing what that looks like, and then maybe demonstrating an evil service, how you could detect that and how you can go about closing that out. So we just ran the netstat command, and you'll see we don't really have much going on. We have Postgres container, another Postgres service running, and so this is actually probably the same one, TCP v6. Oops. So what we're going to do is I'm going to spin up just a local web server. So we're going to run python-m http server -b specifies the address. So if we come back to our netstat command, this local address here is what we're specifying with the -b tag on the HTTP server command, and so, or module, and 80 is going to be the port that we're listening on. So this part right here after the colon is the port. So what we should see whenever we start this, you'll see that we're listening on that. If we run this command again, we now see a new service that was created, new process. We see it's Python 3, which we know is the program that we're running, Python 3. We're listening on local, which is 127.0.0.1, port 80. So from an attacker standpoint, if I'm on this box and I see this, I know that Python's running a web server, but it's listening on local, right? So I can't really use that to exfil data necessarily in its current state. So something that I may do, let me just open a new tab here. We'll do IP-addr to get the IP address, which is 192.168.1.18 of this machine. On our attacker machine, we're just using our Sentinel sensor that we were using in a previous video, but whatever VM you have. If I were to try to access that web page, I'm just going to type in HTTP // we don't technically have to put that in, but if I did try to access this, what you'll notice is it's unable to connect. Why is that? Well, as we stated before, this is listening on local, right? So if I'm an attacker and I want to try to get access to that web server, it's only listening on local, so it's nothing I can do about that. Well, let's say, because I have access, I want to spin up another server, right? And if we don't specify this TAC-B, then what it'll actually do by default is it's going to listen on 0000, which means listen on all interfaces. So you're going to be able to connect to it from local. You're going to be able to connect to it from an external machine, like our attacker machine. And if we check listening ports now, we run this command again, we can see we're listening on 0000 port 8888, which we specified here. And so if we're not expecting to have an external web server, or a web server that's listening outside of a local IP address, then this is something by using this netstat command that may stick out to us, right? If we're not expecting to have something again facing that 0000, or we could have ran it with the 192.168 IP address, and that would have been populated here as well. So something that you can look for whenever you're on a machine, whenever you first get access, especially during those competitions, you can use the netstat command with the tunpl in Linux, and you can populate some of this data out. Well, let's just see what that looks like from an attacker standpoint. So when we try to access the web server over port 80, right, we got this could not connect message. However, if we access 8888 that we just spun up, okay, it's saying secure connection failed. That's because it's trying to do HTTPS. So let me just remove the S. Right, we've got access to that machine now. So now we could pull data off. We could do other things, all kinds of stuff. We're not going to go into all the details there for this video, but just know that now, we created a server that's listening externally that we could actually get access to the machine from our attacker machine here. So that's using the netstat command. Again, you may be able to see something like that, and you may be thinking, okay, well, how do we, shut that service down? Because we don't want that running, right? We don't want that listening there. Obviously, having firewalls in place for something like this, again, maybe we'll go over that in another video. We're not going to talk about that here, but having firewalls that would prevent access to external stuff like this is a good thing to have. But in this scenario, let's just talk about how we get rid of this. So using this process ID, again, that we mentioned earlier, and you need to have sudo rights typically to populate this PID program name column. But what we can do is use the kill command. And so what we could do is sudo kill. I like to use tac9, and what that's actually going to do is send a sig kill signal to the service. And so basically why that's helpful is if there's a program that is unresponsive, then just sending the normal kill command, it will actually ignore it. It won't shut it down if it's an unresponsive program. So I like to use the tac9 because it'll essentially kill the service no matter what. So kill tac9, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put in the process ID. So we just copied it from there. So if I paste it 539136, I press enter, and then I'm going to run the netstat command again, you'll notice it's not there anymore. Well, let's see what happened in our evil server terminal. You'll see that it was killed, right? So it's no longer up. So now if you refresh this, there's nothing listening, okay? So that's something that if you do notice services or things listening that you don't expect, obviously do your due diligence and make sure you don't have something running there that maybe somebody else spawned up on your team or in your team. But if no one knows what that is, then you should be keeping kind of like a running list of those services and processes. But if no one knows what that is and you want to get rid of it, using the kill command is a great way to do that. One thing to keep in mind is if you do kill this program or this process, and you see you run the netstat command, maybe after some period of time, and you see that it created itself again, there may be some sort of service or something that's running in the background that every time, or it could be some sort of just script that's running somewhere. There's many other ways, but basically you could have another process or another script that is constantly, maybe even a cron job, right? Maybe there's a cron job set to every hour check if that service is running, and if it's not, create it again or rerun it, or that program. So one thing to think about is if you do see these things randomly popping up, make sure that you do your due diligence of checking for those other things like scripts, cron jobs, etc., to find out what is it that's creating this? Why does this process keep coming back, or why does this service keep restarting itself? And that's also useful again during competitions. Sometimes whenever you do this, if you just get on a box and you run this, and you're like, oh, okay, we don't have anything really externally exposed or anything that we're not supposed to. There's no processes or programs that are running that we don't expect. However, what they'll have at times that we've seen in the past is a script or a cron job or something on the machine that at a specific time, it will actually trigger a service to run or a bash script to run or something that will open up a ton of ports on your machine, as well as create services that are accessible externally. So this is something that you want to keep an eye on periodically, right? Just because I ran the command now doesn't mean that somebody didn't spin up another server or service. So it's good, especially again in the competition space, to kind of just check on these different services and programs that are running. Check your external ports, check your firewall rules, we'll have a video for that here shortly. But make sure you're checking those things periodically to note any changes or anything that's suspicious or that you didn't expect to be there.